The year is 1877. Reconstruction, a time of hope and rebuilding after the Civil War, is coming to a close. The Compromise of 1877, a political agreement, sealed the fate of Reconstruction. Federal troops who had been stationed in the South to protect the rights of newly freed Black Americans were withdrawn. This withdrawal left Black communities vulnerable to the resurgence of white supremacy. The promise of equal rights and protection under the law, so fiercely fought for, began to fade. Reconstruction, meant to rebuild and reconcile, ended with a betrayal of Black Americans. Southern states were readmitted to the Union. However, the federal government's commitment to protecting Black rights waned. The dream of a just and equal society seemed distant once more. The Compromise of 1877 marked a turning point in American history. It signaled the beginning of a long and arduous struggle for Black equality. This struggle would continue for generations. With the end of Reconstruction, a new era dawned in the South. White Southerners, calling themselves Redeemers, seized control of state governments. They were determined to restore white supremacy and erase the gains made by Black Americans during Reconstruction. Redeemer governments were characterized by their hostility towards Black political and economic advancement. Black citizens had briefly tasted political participation and land ownership. Now they faced a systematic assault on their newfound freedoms. One by one, Southern states enacted laws and policies designed to disenfranchise Black voters. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses were implemented, creating insurmountable barriers to Black suffrage. These measures effectively silenced the Black vote. They ensured white control over the political process. The voices of Black citizens, once heard in state legislatures and courthouses, were stifled. The promise of equal citizenship, enshrined in the 14th and 15th Amendments, was betrayed. As Redeemer governments tightened their grip on power, a new social order emerged in the South. Jim Crow laws, named after a minstrel show character that mocked Black people, became the law of the land. These laws mandated racial segregation in all aspects of public life. From cradle to grave, Black Americans were relegated to separate and unequal facilities. Separate but equal was the deceptive mantra used to justify this system. In reality, Jim Crow was anything but equal. Schools, hospitals, parks, theaters, and even cemeteries were segregated. Black schools received less funding, had outdated textbooks, and often lacked basic supplies. Black patients were relegated to overcrowded and understaffed hospitals. Black children played in rundown parks, if they had access to parks at all. The daily indignities of Jim Crow were endless, a constant reminder of the second-class status imposed upon Black Americans. Section 4. Lynching, Terror, and Racial Violence in the Jim Crow South. Under the shroud of Jim Crow, racial violence escalated to horrific levels. Lynching, the extra-legal murder of individuals by mobs, became a terrifying tool of terror and oppression. Black men, women, and even children were lynched for perceived offenses, often without any evidence or due process. These acts of racial terror were rarely prosecuted. They served as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of Black lives in the Jim Crow South. Ida B. Wells, a fearless journalist and activist, emerged as a leading voice against lynching. She meticulously documented these atrocities, exposing the lie that lynchings were primarily a response to Black criminality. Wells's investigations revealed that lynching was a brutal means of maintaining white supremacy and enforcing Jim Crow. She risked her life to bring this issue to national and international attention. Section 5. The Lost Cause Myth, Rewriting History, Perpetuating Oppression. As Jim Crow tightened its grip, a dangerous myth began to take hold, the Lost Cause narrative. This false narrative sought to romanticize the Confederacy and minimize the horrors of slavery. It portrayed the Civil War as a struggle for states' rights, not the preservation of human bondage. The Lost Cause myth permeated textbooks, monuments, and public discourse. This distorted version of history served to justify the disenfranchisement and segregation of Black Americans. It fueled racial prejudice and perpetuated the belief in white supremacy. The Lost Cause myth was a powerful tool used to silence discussions about racial equality. It hindered progress towards a more just and equitable society. The legacy of this myth continues to resonate in contemporary debates about race and history.